Good day, everyone. So, we are now on the approaches and methods of language teaching, particularly on methods. But before we proceed to my discussion, let me first distinguish these three fundamental terms in language teaching. So, these are approach, method, and techniques. So, according to Anthony 1963, approach is the broad philosophical perspective on language teaching, while method is the set of procedures on how to teach the second language, while technique is a specific classroom activity applied in language teaching. So, overall, techniques carry out a method which is consistent with an approach. So, from approach down to method and then technique. So according to Morsha 2014, there are myriad of language teaching approach and methods. In pre-20th century, we have the grammar translation approach and direct method. While in early and mid-20th century, we have audiolingual method and oral situational approach. And in the final quarter, we have the cognitive approach, affective humanistic approach, comprehension-based approach, and designer methods. So for today's discussion, we are going to talk about designer methods. So what is designer methods? So there are several methods that emerged in the 1970s. And David Noonan, 1989, referred to this method as designer method because they took a one-size-fits-all approach. So when we say one-size-fits-all approach, these methods imply that all students learn in the same way. So they provide a specific procedures and materials for the teacher that are applicable to all. So there are several methods, but this will be elaborated in the discussions of the next reporters. However, let me give you an overview or a glimpse of these methods. So let's start with the silent way method. The teacher works with the student and the student works on the language. So the silent way method devised by Caleb Gategno shares certain principles with the cognitive code approach, which emphasize that learners are actively responsible for their own learning. So the teacher should give them only what they absolutely need to promote learning. And then the students must use their previous and existing knowledge to learn the second language. So basically, the teacher must start with the basic knowledge, which is the sounds. So this method promotes independent learning. The teacher will just set up situations that allow students to learn the structure of the language. So it is inductive in the sense that the learner will discover the rule from the examples and then practice it. So it means that the learners will do much of the talking, and they will be independent and autonomous and responsible learners, as this method promotes independent learning. So next is the community language learning. So this method consider whole person learning, which view their students as whole person by considering not just their intellect but also emotion. So, for example, in a form of circle, the students will decide what and when they like to talk in native language, and the teacher will translate this into the target language. So, the teacher will record the student's conversation and transcribe it. So, each chunk of the words is recorded. So, compared to the silent way method, which is an independent learning, in this community language learning method, the students are very dependent because the whole conversation will be recorded and they will be provided materials for them to study. So there are vocabulary pairs, which refers to the translation of the native language into the target language, which is provided by the teacher. So the teacher uh, will give much assistance and support to the learners. So basically, the teacher should be understandable. So the teacher will understand the students and will give assistance and support to the student. Next is the total physical response. So, so James Asher based this method on the process of how children acquire their first language. So, of course, the child will not automatically able to produce the words, but the child will first observe his or her environment and comprehend the word through the physical action as response. So there is a comprehension approach where language learning starts first with understanding and then it ends with the production of words. So, for example, the teacher will command sit down. So he will first demonstrate the physical action as response. So mulingkod sa si teacher. And then by that, the students will understand the meaning of sit down. So later on, the student will now do the command if they are ready to speak. And that is what we call role reversal. So first, mag-command sa si teacher. And then, the teacher will demonstrate the physical action as response. So there is a comprehension first. So basically, only the target language is used with the help of command. So command is the major teaching technique of this method. So there is a coordination of speech and action. And lastly, we have Suggestopedia. So So this method eliminates negative feelings or association towards learning and helps students to overcome the barriers of learning. So these barriers refer to the affective filters. So for example, if the learner has a doubt or has a fear to produce the utterances of the target language. So this method promotes or aims to eliminate those affective filters in order for the learner to study the second language. So, to eliminate these barriers, there is an integration of fine arts. So, this Suggestopedia method view the music as a therapy or a relaxation for the learners to easily indulge the target language. So there is an integration of arts. So there is a great attention on first the classroom setup. So it must be bright and cheerful. And second, there is a peripheral learning. So the teacher must put posters containing grammatical information about the target language on the classroom walls. And then third, there is a creative adaptation and primary activation. So the students will be engaged in various activities regard relating to the target language. For example, reading dialogues and scripts of target language by group, individually, or by pairs. So there are critics on designer methods, especially that these methods provide specific materials and procedures. So the rigidity of methods could not adhere to complex circumstances and teaching and learning languages. So that's according to Strivens 1977. So in addition, it draws more attention towards materials and strategies rather than how the teacher and learner could operate effectively in the learning process. So that's it. So nevertheless, according to Prabo 1990, so there is no single best method. So in conclusion, teachers are not limited to imply one specific methods, but teachers must be creative to incorporate methods that will best serve the language teaching process. So remember that learners have different learning styles and are unique. So we as future teachers must consider this factor. So we must not just rely on one specific method, but we could be creative. We could create our own. We could incorporate or mix methods just to serve our the needs of our learners. So let's review. Designer methods are several methods that took a one-size-fits-all approach and provides with specific procedures and materials. So under designer methods, we have the silent way method. Learning is facilitated if the learner discovers or creates rather than remembers and repeats what is to be learned. So there is an independent learning. Total physical response method. There is a coordination of speech and action, and it attempts to teach language through physical activity. Suggestopedia. Eliminate barriers through integrating arts. Centrality of music and musical rhythm to learning. And last, we have community language learning, which helps foster a climate of caring and sharing in the foreign language class. And the critic, the rigidity of the methods could not adhere to complex circumstances. So that's it. So thank you for listening and be safe.